Let's take a look at functions. So we got two questions here. The first one is fairly straightforward, where they're just going to ask us to plug some stuff in, plug in a number into our formula. But we need to know how to do that for sure. So we'll go over this, and then we'll go over a domain question, which can be confusing because a lot of times we don't even know what domain necessarily means, right? So the domain questions are a little trickier. Okay, so this one says y equals 2x minus 5 given that x equals negative 3. So we're just going to plug in that negative 3 where the x is and solve. Right, so I got 2 times negative 3 minus 5. Okay, y from there equals 2 times negative 3 is negative 6 minus 5 equals negative 11. Okay, and right, remembering kind of like from the number line, so from negative 6 minus 5, it's not like 6 minus 5 equals 1, so it's not negative 1, it's 5 less than negative 6, so like 1 less than negative 6 is negative 7, and then going on down the line all the way to negative 11. Okay, so that's that one. Let's go ahead and erase real quick here, and then we move into a little bit harder question. With domain. Okay. And get my marker back. All right. So the domain, when you get a domain question, domain means all possible values, right? So like it's a word that you can hear people use like in the business world sometimes as well, right? Where like, say I was a marketing professional, right? I worked in the marketing department and somebody asked me like a complicated finance question, is I could say that's out of my domain, right? And so what does that mean? It means it's like outside of my knowledge base. Okay, right? Domain is the stuff that's inside of my knowledge base. So a marketing question would be in my domain in this question. I'm not sure if that example helps. If it doesn't, just forget it and we'll keep going. Okay, but domain is all possible values that we could have. So here's a question, right? So I got x divided by, we'll put this in parentheses, x squared plus 6x plus 9. Okay, that's an x here. Okay, and so what they want to know, so what we have here is any number works, but the denominator cannot be 0. Okay, so the denominator is the part of the fraction that's on the bottom, that x squared plus 6x plus 9. Okay, so for any values of x, we have to get it where it can't equal 0. Okay, so this takes us kind of back to how we solve a quadratic formula, quadratic equations. Okay, where we would go like, when you're trying to solve for a quadratic equation, you'd put in two parentheses like this and set it equal to 0, right? Okay, and then you'd go like this, and then so the rules here are that we're gonna have two numbers, x plus something times x plus something, and the two numbers need to multiply to 9, add up to 6, right? And if this is confusing to you, go watch the video on quadratic equations where you get a bunch of practice on this, okay? But so like with this one, is my only options would be really 9 and 1, because 9 times 1 is 9, but when I add those two together, I get 10, so that doesn't work. But 3 times 3 is 9, and those add up to 6, so that actually does work out pretty well. Okay, so then you have x plus 3 times x plus 3 equals 0, right? And if you just want to sort of test the workout, what you're doing is you're multiplying those two together, and those two, then these two, and these two, right? So x times x is x squared plus 3x plus 3x plus 9. and the 3x plus 3x is 6x, so it works out. Okay, so we factored it correctly, and then what we're doing is what value of x would make, like that whole print would make this thing right here, what value for x would get us 0, right? And then 0 times anything is 0, and that answer would be -3, right? So if x is -3, then the solution will be 0. Okay, and so what we would say for domain is x equals all real numbers except -3. That would be our answer. Okay, and you can test this out. So if you want to see this in, you want to test it out, right? Because it seems like this is some weird, crazy math that you're doing on me here, Brad. Then let's take a look. Okay, so if we have x equals -3, right? So that would mean we would have -3 squared, right? I'm just plugging in for x, plus 6 times -3 plus 9. So we're saying when we plugged it in that we were going to get 0 here, right? So let's see if it worked out. -3 squared is 9, plus 6 times -3 is -18, plus 9 again. Okay, 9 plus -18 is -9, plus 9, 0. So it worked out, right? So anyway, so that's our answer. Is they'll have, your answer choices are going to be like all real numbers except, and then they'll give you different answers, right? And so in this case, the domain would be all real numbers except for -3. So this can take a little practice because we're just not used to thinking about things like domain is all real numbers except something. It's different than what we're used to doing in other math type problems, and certainly anything outside of math, right? But really it's fairly straightforward if you understand how to factor using the quadratic equations. If you understand how to do that, set it up, and it's not too bad.